All right, today we're going to talk about solving rational equations. And I want to remind you that a rational equation is an equation with a fraction in it. And so here are the steps we're going to start with today. One, we're going to factor everywhere. We've been doing that for the last couple weeks, working with rational expressions. Today we're going to add in that equal sign. Step two, we're going to state those restrictions. Remember, the restrictions are when there's a variable in the denominator and what makes the denominator 0. 3, we're going to clear the fractions using the common denominator. 4, we're going to solve the remaining equation. And then 5, we're going to eliminate any extraneous solutions. Extraneous solutions are solutions we get that are one of the restrictions. We have to get rid of it. All right, let's go to example number 1. In example number 1, we're going to have 1/3 minus x equals 1/6. Now, we've done many problems like this in the past, so I wanted to start off with one. Our common denominator here is 6. So in order to clear the fraction, we're going to times everything by 6. In the first one, 3 goes into 6 twice. So we have 2 times 1 minus 6 times x, because there is no denominator, equals, and here our 6's will cancel, and we have 1. So this is 2 minus 6x equals 1. Subtracting 2 to the other side, we have negative 6x equals negative 1. And then dividing both sides by negative 6, we get x equals positive 1/6. So, a couple things we need to talk about. 1, there was no variable in the denominator, so there were no restrictions. 2, the common denominator has to include all the factors in the bottom. So in this one, we have a factor of 3, and 6 is 3 times 2. So you got to make sure you include all of your factors. All right, let's try another one. Here's example number 2. For example number 2, let's say we have 2x over 3 minus 1/2 equals 2x plus 5 over 6. Again, the first thing we need to do is there any place to factor. We don't have anything we need to factor in the denominator. Step 2 is state your restrictions. Well, there's no variables in the denominator, so we have no restrictions. Step 3, we need to clear the fraction by multiplying by the common denominator. In this case, the common denominator, again, is 6. In the first one, 3 goes into 6 2 times, so we're left with 2 times 2x minus, here 2 goes into 6 3 times, so we're left with 3 times 1 equals, and here 6 goes into 6, which gets rid of our denominator, and we have 2x plus 5. 2 times 2x is 4x. Negative 3 times 1 is negative 3 equals 2x plus 5. Subtracting 2x to the left, I have 2x minus 3 equals 5. Adding 3 to the right, we have 2x equals 8, and then dividing both sides by 2. We get x equals 4. And again, since there's no restrictions, there is no extraneous solution I need to get rid of. All right, let's step this up a little bit. Let's go with example number 3. We have 3 over x plus x over 4 equals x plus 14 over 4x. All right, 1, factor everywhere. Well, we already have that. Step 2 is state your restrictions. So in our restrictions, here, let me clean this up a little bit. Our restrictions are when there's a variable, what makes the denominator 0. In this case, because there's just an x here, cannot have x cannot equal 0. Same thing with this one. If I were to set that equal to 0, x again cannot equal 0. So now I got to determine what's my common denominator. Taking into account all of our factors, the common denominator is going to be 4x. So I'm going to multiply every single term by 4x to get rid of the fraction. In the first one, you'll notice that this x and the x here will cancel. I'm left with 4 times 3 plus. In this one, you'll notice the 4 and the 4 cancel, and I'm left with x times x. Equals. And in the last one, the 4x and the 4x cancel, and I am left with x plus 14. Now solving the remaining equation. I have 12 plus x squared equals x plus 14. All right. All in one step, I'm going to get the whole thing set equal to 0 since I do have a squared term here. And I'm going to put it in the right order. So I have my x squared first. Subtracting x to this side, I still have plus 12 equals 14. I still need to subtract this 14 to the left. So let's subtract 14 to get the whole thing set equal to 0. So I have x squared minus x minus 2 equals 0. Now I can factor this, or I could do the quadratic formula. Factoring it, I'm going to go ahead and draw my x. Negative 2 on top, negative 1 on the bottom is negative 2 and 1. So I have x minus 2 times by x plus 1 equals 0. Now when I factor it, I set any factors equal to 0. So x minus 2 equals 0, or x equals 2. And I have x plus 1 equals 0, or in this case, x equals negative 1. Now neither of those were restrictions, so in this case, both answers work. All right, so let's move on. Whoops, I'm sorry about that. Moving on to example number 4. Let's say I have 12 over 4x minus 1/4 equals 5 over x squared. Again, we need to first factor everywhere. That's not a possibility here, not anything we have. So then next, we need to state our restrictions. What makes the denominator 0? Well, it's when x is 0. So x cannot equal 0 is our restriction. Now our common denominator. We have a 4, we have an x, and we have an x squared. So our common denominator really is 4x squared. And we're going to multiply that by every single term. So in this one, the 4 and 1 of the x's will cancel. Or you can look at it as, what factor is this first term missing? It's missing one of the x's. So I'm going to multiply by x. Minus. In this one, we have a 4, but we don't have either of the x's. So we have 1 times x squared. And in our last one, we have x squared, but the 5 is missing a factor of 4. So we're times by 4. So we have 12x minus x squared equals 20. Again, I want to get this set equal to 0 since I have a squared term or a quadratic term. And since it's negative, I'm going to move it to the right so it's positive. So I'm going to add x squared to the right, and I'm going to subtract 12x to the right. So I have 0 equals x squared minus 12x plus 20. Now I'm going to go ahead and factor that. 20 on top, negative 12 on the bottom. My factors would be negative 10 and negative 2. So I have x minus 10 times x minus 2. Then I would go ahead and set each of those factors equal to 0. So x equals positive 10. If I have x minus 2 equals 0, x equals positive 2. And again, neither of those are restrictions, so both of those answers are good. Let's try one last example today. Example number 5. All right, so example number 5, let's try this. We have 5 over 2x minus 2 over 3 equals 1 over x plus 5 over 6. All right, so the real trick to this one is finding what the common denominator is going to be. All right, if you look at this whole thing, first let's state our restrictions. We have x cannot equal, and in the first one we have an x right here. What would make this denominator 0 is if x equals 0. And we also have a variable here. We have an x. That too would be 0, would make the denominator 0. Now, finding that common denominator. We have a 2 and an x. We have a 3. This x is part of the 2x, and 6 is part of 2 and 3 together. So our common denominator is going to be 6x. 6x involves every single thing that's here, right? We have a 2x, we have a 3, we have an x, and really 6 is 2 times 3. So both are involved. All right, so now we're going to use the 6x, or 2 times 3 times x, to determine what we need to multiply each fraction by to clear it. And the first one, the 5, the 2 and the x are involved, so the factor we're missing is the 3. Minus 2. In this one, we have a 3 in the denominator, so the 2 factors the second fraction is missing are the 2 and the x. Equals. Here, this one has an x in the denominator, so it's missing the factors of 2 and 3, or 6 plus. And in the last one, it has the 6, or the 2 and 3, but it's missing the x. All right, let's simplify this up a little bit. 5 times 3 is 15. Minus 2 times 2x is 4x. Equals 1 times 6 is 6, plus 5x. Subtracting my x's to the left, I have 15 minus 9x equals 6. Subtracting 15 to the right, I have negative 9x equals negative 9. Dividing both sides by negative 9, and x equals positive 1. Is positive 1 one of our restrictions? So this is a good answer. All right, your homework for today. I wanted to keep it very basic, and we will build on this more tomorrow. So your homework today is on page 546. Numbers 8 through 19 all. That is 12 problems. Now, here's the thing. In none of these do we have to worry about step 1. Step 1 we're going to introduce tomorrow. So you're going to be starting with stating your restrictions, then finding your common denominator, then clearing the fraction, and solving your remaining equation, and then eliminating any extraneous solutions. All right, good luck, you guys. I'll see you tomorrow.